Hello and welcome to the Airline Weekly Lounge. I'm your host Gordon Smith and I'm joined as usual by co-host Jay Shabbat. In this week's show, we're talking America's all-star growth markets. Hi Jay, how's it going?
All right, Gordon, how are you?
Doing very, very well. You're getting ready to go to the airport, aren't you?
Yes. We're speaking here on early Tuesday, and you are already your journey's already complete. Mine's about to begin very shortly.
Yours are slightly shorter than mine, but you are going from the East Coast down here to Fort Worth. So we are getting ready for the Skift Aviation Forum. As you are listening to this, the event will be over. So don't go scrambling down to Fort Worth expecting to see us. But yeah, we will have a full debrief in the next issue with all of the highlights there, Jay. In this particular episode of the show, we are talking about what we've described as America's all-star growth markets. So the parameters are as follows. These aren't necessarily the fastest growing, but they are notably growing. And it doesn't include absolutely every airport. We're talking sort of major airports. So you may have a regional or a county airfield somewhere that's doing very, very well in growth terms. But for the purposes of this conversation, we're not considering those. And we are looking particularly at Q1 of 2026. Is that right, Jay?
Yeah, we'll do that today, and then we'll talk a little bit about the single superstar growth market that the gold medal market that we wrote about in this week's Airline Weekly issue.
Sounds good. All right, well, kick us off, Jay. Give us a scene setter.
All right. Well, so we'll start with we're looking again, as Gordon said, at U.S. airports for the upcoming first quarter because we are in December now, believe it or not. Couple of weeks left in 2025. So with the first quarter up fast approaching, the fastest growing airport in the US, and as you mentioned before, also that it's literally not the fastest in percentage terms because there's some tiny ones off a small base that may be a little higher, but of the big guys, the big, substantial airports in the US. And I don't know, what do we, let's see, how many did I pull here? Roughly, let's see, we're looking at the top. This would be a lot quicker and easier if my Excel skills were better. But about 50 markets, about top 50 markets. I'm going to quiz you now, Gordon. I know you weren't expecting this, but what is number one? And my hint is that it won't surprise you if you're an Airline Weekly reader.
That's got to be Nashville, Jay, based on last week's Airline Weekly story. And I know we're going to discuss that in part 2, but it's also Q1's fastest growing.
Ding, 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 ding. Right again, Gordon. It's Nashville. 11% in terms of seat growth. This is from Cirium Dio data, by the way. Scheduled seats from Nashville up 11% for the first quarter 2026 versus 2025. So that's your growth superstar. And just to get a sense, I mean, a lot of these will be familiar. Austin is up 9%, so that comes in the number 2 slot here among the top 50. Austin is also one of these cities or metro areas in the U.S. that are growing very fast, both economically and in terms of population. It's probably cooled off a little bit down in Austin, but still a very fast growth market. Then you have San Diego at 8%. And I think a lot of that is just Alaska has been adding some routes. I didn't look at each and every one of these to see what precisely is driving the growth, but San Diego is certainly a big growth market for Alaska Airlines. And then without going, I'm not going to go too deep into the list here, but Chicago coming up number 4. Chicago is simply a function of American trying to grow that back after shrinking it over a couple of years. That's a topic I think we've talked about before on this podcast. And well, I'll give you one more. Number 5 is Fort Lauderdale, which is interesting because of Spirit's bankruptcy. They're obviously contracting, but other airlines are rushing in to fill the Spirit vacuum. So Fort Lauderdale is up 6%. And, keep in mind, 6% is 6%. We're not talking about, airports growing at, 25% pace or anything like that. I mean, if you go around the world, you'll find more of that kind of hyper growth. There is the simple fact that next quarter, total seats from all U.S. airports will be up just 1% year over year. So we're in a very slow growth environment overall. So these growth superstars stand out in that context.
And Jay, there might be some people listening who are maybe a little curious. Are we comparing quarterly growth, as in Q4 to Q1, or is this referring back to last year's Q1? Because obviously there's seasonal markets and there's destinations which frankly do better and worse in Q1 than others. So tell the listeners how we're crunching the numbers.
Thanks for clarifying that. It's quarter one versus quarter one last year. So these are year over year comparisons, not quarter to quarter. And you're absolutely right that if you did quarter to quarter, that could be interesting to look at and useful in some ways. But of course, as you just said, each quarter has its own seasonal characteristics that are unique. So the first quarter is usually a very it was weaker in the past for the US than it is now, but it tends to be a slower quarter. What happens is January, probably the slowest month of the year, I would think, because it's after the big, people traveled for Thanksgiving, they traveled for the Christmas holidays, and January is kind of when everybody sort of pulls back on their travel. February, that tends to be a little bit of the case, a little bit case too. People start. It's actually a very busy period for booking travel because a lot of Americans will, come late January, February, start thinking about their springtime, summer vacations, and they'll book them around this time. But in terms of people actually traveling, it is pretty slow. Now, once you get into February and March, you do have the sort of the sunshine market peak seasons, and that's Florida, that's Arizona, maybe some California markets, but Florida especially. If you think about some of these very sunshine oriented airlines, like the aptly named Sun Country, and also Allegiant is another one, and even to an extent JetBlue, although don't underestimate the very, very large number of ASMs. That's a measure of capacity that JetBlue flies transatlantically and transcontinentally, especially more so transcontinentally. But they're heavy on Florida too. So those markets do very, very well in the first quarter. Although maybe not this year because I just booked a Florida ticket for very, very a very low price. So can't the fare attraction can't be that good this peak season. But anyway, it is a in terms of patterns of demand, first quarter is good for the sunshine markets.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Jay. I was looking at my inbox last week and you were the same. And I won't name the airline, but there was an airline that was sharing a press release, as very common, and it was offering some very attractive fares. And if I was wearing my consumer hat, I'd be like, great. But you wear your analyst hat and you think, is that a red flag? Yes, it was a transatlantic route and it wasn't just a handful of super promotions for Black Friday. This was basically from December right through to February, incredible availability, and that's that can be a bit of an off season depending on your O and D. But these fares were almost too low, and we both said the same thing, Jay. Like, yikes!
Yikes. That's another very interesting and important consequential question that we'll talk about another time. But will the transatlantic market be as strong this summer as it was last summer? And there are some reasons to believe that maybe it won't be, but we'll leave that as a cliffhanger.
We shall. Well, based on the load factor on my flight yesterday into DFW, things are still looking pretty good. It was very, very busy. Jay, any other notable nuggets before we get into Nashville in part two that our listeners should be aware of?
Well, I should probably give you a couple of the bottom ones. And well, I'll give you just the bottom one. Oakland is still down the most among the big airports. Is a 16% year over year decrease in Q1, and right behind it is actually San Jose, California, which is Silicon Valley, and that's mostly a function of short haul California markets being much less robust than they were pre-pandemic. Southwest has pulled a lot of traffic, pulled a lot of capacity from that, and that the exit of that capacity, that trend continues. So nothing too new there. But that's all I've got, Gordon. We can move on and talk about Music City.
Sounds good, Jay. We've got a quick break before that, and a quick reminder as well to send any questions or comments that you might have for us to podcasts@skift.com. That's podcasts with an S at the end. And please don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast, wherever you're listening or watching. And if you are enjoying the show, please rate us 5 stars or leave us a positive review so we can continue to spread the word about the Airline Weekly Lounge. Don't go anywhere. We'll be talking Nashville in part 2. Hello and welcome back to the Airline Weekly Lounge. I'm Gordon Smith, joined as usual by co-host Jay Shabbat. Part 1, we were discussing various hot markets in the US. We are drilling down now into Nashville, Tennessee. As anyone that read our feature story in the most recent issue of Airline Weekly will now know, Nashville is a really hot market, Jay. What are the factors driving that growth?
And just before I answer your question, as we went to the break there, I realized that I neglected to say, particularly when I was talking about Oakland, that a big reason why that market is down, as well as some of the other markets that where you see big negatives, a big reason is that Spirit has cut a lot of flights in these places. So, all right. Having said that, what was your question? Nashville. Why is
Nashville,
Nashville?
yeah.
Okay.
Why is it so good?
Because of the country music. Everybody wants to go hear their favorite tunes. Are you a country music fan, Jordan?
I'm open to it. I wouldn't say it's my natural go-to genre of choice. I don't wake up in the morning and say, get that country artist on. But actually, when I am sort of browsing the radio dial, just like the old-fashioned days, and you come across a bit of country and western, I'm all for it. And yeah, coming to you from Texas, I know it's I don't want to homogenize the states and think that Tennessee is the same as Texas, but there's a sort of southern element to the music in this part of the world. And as an outsider looking in and listening in, it's yeah, it's really, really nice. I can imagine, Jay, especially with the neon lights and with the music pumping out and the atmosphere looks pretty good down there. I can see why that in itself, never mind everything else around the broader economy, would be very appealing to an inbound market.
Yeah, and Nashville is as I mentioned earlier, it is a market that's just seen tremendous growth in population, tremendous growth in the economy. A lot of that economic growth is think of sectors like technology. Amazon has a very big office there. We have healthcare, just huge medical facilities, and the largest privately owned hospital chain, HCA, is based there. There's yeah, all sorts of, and it's a bit big for right outside of Nashville. You have a lot of big auto factories. I think is it Nissan that I think has their America's headquarters there. So a lot, just a lot of economic activity, and then of course going back to the conversation we just had, it is a big tourist draw. Not so much international tourists, but a lot of domestic tourists, particularly in the East, will go there. And it's most famous for country music, but there's other things to see there too. They have the Opry, which is famous kind of hotel, and where a lot of the country music performers uh, made their names. And so it's just become a really dynamic market. In the past, since COVID, since 2019, the capacity there is up like 50%, almost 50%. And there's really no other airport of significant size in the US that reaches that level. San Juan, interestingly, in Puerto Rico is pretty close, but that's another story. I joke with our colleague Dennis, who lives down there. I attribute San Juan's growth to him flying back and forth all the time to New Jersey, but there may be something
The
more
Dennis
to it.
effect.
The Dennis effect, yeah, yeah. And speaking of, the Southwest effect is alive and well in Nashville. That Southwest is the largest airline in Nashville by far, and it's an extremely strategic market for them, and for a lot of reasons. I mean, one just being all the growth that that was experienced, that we just talked about, but you also think about, Nashville many years ago, going back to the 80s and 90s, Nashville was briefly a hub for, not even briefly, really, I guess it was almost a decade, was a hub for American. And they really built up the airport infrastructure to handle that hub. But then when American dehubbed the market, Southwest was kind of able to step in and grab some of those gate facilities and whatnot, uh, presumably on very good terms. And they've really built that airport up a lot. If you think about Nashville's geography, it's not that different from Atlanta's and Charlotte's. And we all know Atlanta and Charlotte are the golden children of connecting hubs. I mean, they're just in immaculate locations for moving traffic from through all different directions. Nashville's kind of there, and we don't know. I mean, Southwest is not. They don't have the traditional hub and spoke system like the Deltas of the world, but they certainly do move a lot of connecting traffic through Nashville. So that's probably helpful for them. And then, yeah, it's just, I'm sure, like a very good market for them in terms of, business traffic, uh, loyalty members, people, members of their Rapid Rewards program. And when Southwest talks about, maybe introducing airport lounges, maybe introducing overseas flights to Europe or wherever, it usually mentions Nashville in the same breath, that they would be kind of on the front lines of anything. I kind of call Nashville like the tip of the spear for Southwest. That's they have a few airports that are busier, but it's extremely strategic. But also you can look at Americans growing there as well, Delta's growing there as well. So for all those reasons, it is growing just super fast. We should mention, however, that Nashville is only the I don't know if you remember I can't remember off the top of my head how it ranks in terms of metro areas. It's in our feature story this week. It's probably like the 30 something largest metro area in terms of population in the US. So it's not large. It has something like 2.1, 2.2 million people in the metro area, which isn't quite large enough to be, a big international hub. It's, you can argue it's on its way, but it's still got a ways before it even reaches, Charlotte's, level of, just that population significance. It is though getting, starting to get some new overseas traffic. British Airways has flown there for a couple of years now, and just this past summer, Aer Lingus
Oh,
and
yes.
Icelandair, yep, has started flying to Nashville. So you can see it's really coming into its own, and it makes me wonder, when Gordon and I, when we're talking 10 years from now, will Nashville have flights to just a whole lot more places around the world?
Yeah, I think it's a great one to watch, Jay. And Aer Lingus as your example there with the XLR, proving that you can get these long and thin routes. And a cynic may say, well, it's one thing to launch a route; it's another to actually make it profitable in the long term. After all of the initial fanfare dies down, and maybe any marketing spend or initial support starts to fizzle up, when you have to stand on your own 2 feet and make a route work, that's where things get really interesting. But arguably, if any aircraft can do it, it's the XLR, because the economics of that thing are just wild. And Jay, as you suggested, Iceland are coming in there with the Max, and with Southwest's new relationship with Iceland. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamics play out there.
Yeah, good points about the specific aircraft that they're using. Those longer range narrow body aircraft could be ideal for an airport like Nashville to win some new service, as we've already seen.
Yeah, but
And
British going in there with the wide bodies though, and I saw British Airways as well launching St. Louis.
yes, and with Nashville, they're flying A350-1000s there next summer, if I remember, and that's a very big aircraft. So what that tells you is that Nashville to London Heathrow route must be doing really well. I mean, we don't know that with 100% certainty. There are all sorts of reasons why different planes are assigned to different routes, but yeah, but I think I'm pretty confident that if you're putting an A350-1000 on that route, it's probably doing really well. And let's not forget, Aer Lingus wouldn't have launched that route if its sister airline, British Airways, wasn't doing well. So I think we have pretty much incontrovertible evidence here that Nashville to London is really gangbusters. Now
It's
I don't know how it does in the winter, but I think it's a good summer can make up for a bad winter.
it is, unless you're Norse.
Unless you're Norse. Now you're pushing me into another discussion here.
Oh
Yeah,
well, no,
Norse may be on the brink, but we don't have time to talk about them.
No, we don't. And they aren't here to defend themselves. So they
The
they do they
problem
do
with
they,
Norse is they didn't even have a good summer.
they have a new CEO though. So I may try and get an interview with the new CEO there and get an idea for the plan. So keep an eye on the next coming issues of Airline Weekly. See if we can have a chat with the new head of Norse, Jay. And anything to wrap up before I let you get to the airport and come down here and join me in Texas?
No, I can't wait to see you and can't wait for the event. Again, we're talking on Tuesday, so people will be listening to this a little bit later in the week. But yep, I'm looking forward to my flight, and I will. You mentioned St. Louis. I'll be connecting through there. So did I just give away which airline I'm going to fly? But
Mhm.
in any case, I will be there soon, Gordon, and we'll yeah, see you then.
And you're not flying back with the same airline, so no one can accuse you of
Correct.
no one can accuse you of favoritism.
No,
I
no, no. It's all yeah. Not it's schedules, price. It's yeah. I don't have. I'm not loyal to any one airline. I'm a mercenary.
Well, you're loyal to our listeners, Jay. Thank you for making the time and squeezing in the recording before you head to the airport. And if you do enjoy the podcast, why not consider a subscription to Airline Weekly? Go to airlineweekly.com/subscribe. You can get a free trial issue there, find out what all the fuss is about. And a reminder that as an Airline Weekly subscriber, you get access to all the airline news on skift.com, plus Skift Research's airline reports as well. And there have been some really great reports in the past couple of weeks and more to come in the new year as well. So keep your eye on Skift Research there. Right. Thanks to Jay for joining me this week. And thanks as always to our producers, Monica and Will, and wherever you are in the world. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, please make sure to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, or leave us a positive review. This really helps us get the word out about the Airline Weekly Lounge, so we can continue to bring you this podcast every week, absolutely free of charge. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Skift channel and hit the notification bell to find out whenever a new video drops.